Good evening and welcome to the December 8th, 2011 meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the November 10th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Day, seconded by Jens. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, this is a public hearing on the Indian River County's request for special exception use approval to construct a wireless communication tower at 72354 4th Street. This is a quasi-judicial item, so anybody who wants to address this item, please stand and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any commissioner here who has visited the site that feels that they cannot make an unbiased decision this evening? Is there anyone here who has had ex parte communications that feel they cannot make an unbiased decision this evening? Thank you. Okay. Stan?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, County Planning Director. This is a request for special exception use. The process for reviewing and approving the application is that the use is reviewed with specific land use criteria, in this case for wireless communications facilities, review of the appropriateness and the compatibility of the requested use, and then there are two public hearings. This is the first public hearing, and the Planning and Zoning Commission tonight is to make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and the Board of County Commissioners will hold a hearing, and they have final approval authority. They can approve the request with conditions, or deny the request. Just a brief description of the project. The project consists of a 180-foot monopole wireless communication facility, which will be located on a portion of a county-owned large stormwater park site. That site, the overall site, is about 35 acres, and it is secure itself. Essentially what we'll have is a small, secure communications tower site within a secure site. The facility is designed to accommodate multiple public users, and its primary user is with respect to public safety and emergency services. The applicant has demonstrated technical justification for the tower's need, its location, its height, and its type, and all of that justification has been reviewed and approved by the county's telecommunications manager. The location of the overall 35-acre site is on the south side of 4th Street, on the east side of 74th Avenue, otherwise known as Rangeline Road, and the site itself and all the surrounding properties are zoned A1 agricultural. This is an aerial of the site, 2010 aerial. 4th Street to the top, 74th Avenue over toward the left or the west, and the 35-acre site is outlined in red. Overall, on the site, access is from 4th Street. An access comes in and goes south, goes to the Indian River Farms Drainage District maintenance facility, and the rest of this site is owned by the county. There is an existing driveway that comes down through and around the site, and the tower will be located a little bit east of an existing asphalt area that's used for the stormwater park. There's some existing ponds, as you can see from this aerial. There's also the algal scrub system, and that's in place here on the site. And one of the things that's actually a little bit difficult maybe to see because of the outline of the property boundaries, but there's quite a significant amount of vegetation along the perimeters of the site. The south and east perimeter along the canal right-of-way between this site and 74th Avenue, as well as along 4th Street. This is a representation of part of the site plan, again showing on the overall site that the tower compound is actually a very small portion of the overall site, with access coming again off the driveway that's already in existence off of 4th Street. Temporary construction access in this general location. The ongoing access to this facility will be generally from the south through this paved area There's also alternate access through the stormwater site from the north to the west end of this shelter. But this is an unmanned facility like most of the communications towers that you all see. So there'll be very, very little traffic, just really for maintenance purposes. This is sort of a blow up of the actual tower here, shown in green, the base of it, and the equipment shelter with a secured, fenced, and gated compound around the tower. Normally, our tower regulations require that landscaping be provided around the perimeter of the actual equipment shelter compound. In this case, though, since the compound itself is within a buffered site, all the required landscaping that would normally go around the fence compound here is going to be supplement existing vegetation around the overall perimeters of the site to give even more buffering to the overall site itself. A few items wanted to highlight is that the landscaping that will be on the perimeter of the site to screen the overall park will be directed by stormwater park staff in locations that are needed. Prior to a building permit being issued, the applicant will demonstrate that the tower structure meets building code criteria, including wind loading. Prior to site plan release, the applicant will provide all necessary FAA and FCC permits, and the applicant will coordinate construction and operation with the stormwater park staff, and that is county staff. Staff's recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the board first of all make findings that are listed in the staff report that are necessary for approving special exception applications, and second, grant the special exception use approval for the tower with the conditions that are outlined in staff's report. And again, the staff's finding as presented in the report is that all the specific land use criteria for this use have been met by the applicant. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Stan, at what height would we have become a factor with any of the little airports around there?
That's a good question. In this location, it's far enough removed from all the general aviation airports, general use airports. They would have to be 200 feet high before it have to be lighted.
Where we are now would be 200 feet.
Correct.
Does that includes? I noticed it was Hibiscus Airport.
Right. New Hibiscus.
And is the aerodome also included in that?
It's not a general use airport. It does not have those same protections or regulations that apply.
Okay.
Would it make sense for the county to go ahead and put lights on it anyhow? Probably not. I think we'd want to follow whatever protocol all the aviators are used to, and we actually we leave that safety issue completely up to them, right. And we tend to not want to put more lights out there and actually draw more attention to it unless it's a safety issue.
Okay. Any further questions of staff? Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Good evening. I'm Rick Ruiski. I'm with Communications International. One quick little note. In the agenda it says that KCI Technologies is the agent. That's KCI Technologies was the engineering group. We are actually the agent for the county. It's not a big deal, but essentially the tower is for emergency services. The primary users are going to be the sheriff's office, fire, EMS. There's a large group of county users in addition to that, but the main reason this tower is going to be constructed is to provide additional coverage in that area of the county for the emergency response people, so they can provide quicker response to the residents that are in the area. And so, that's the main reason we're doing this, and the county has a perfect spot for it there. It's right where the engineers need it, so it meets everything that the county needs for that.
Sir, we hope that since we are putting a tower up, that there'll be more than just the EMS services being able to use the facility, to use the tower.
Sure.
You should be able to have a number of other people using the tower, shouldn't you?
Yes, and that's correct. It's available if somebody comes along in the county wants to rent some additional space on the tower, they can do that. But just within county government, there's a number of, even to traffic engineering, utilities, the school board, there's a lot of people that use that system that are on that tower. But to your point, that the tower would be available if somebody else needed space, and the county could work out an agreement with them.
How many users would that tower facilitate?
Users, you mean as in radio users right now? There's over 2,700.
Okay.
The actual number of, say, tenants on the tower would depend on the loading, what size antennas they needed, and that sort of thing. So there could be up to 2 more tenants on the tower.
About 5,
Yeah.
max 180. Okay, thank you.
Will the primary service area be the southeastern quadrant of the county, or more
I
than
think
that?
that's southwest. Southwest?
Southwest.
Yeah, southwest.
The southwestern quadrant.
Yeah.
And do you anticipate that at some point in the future, additional towers will be needed to continue to service that area as it grows?
I'll be real quick. Bob Stork, Communications International. This is just one step. The system started in '95. We're trying to improve some coverage, and so this is a step. They may or may not approve more as the county grows, but it's meant to cover better for the sheriff's, police, fire, ambulance in there. So yes, we anticipate later on, and it's usually about a 6 or 7 mile radius that it covers.
Has there been a lack of service in that area because of not having a tower there?
There has, and it was documented when the system was put in, and the county could only afford as much as they put into the system, which was a 3-site system. This would make it a 4-site system.
Okay. Has there been any opposition to this from local residents?
No, Madam Chairman. The notices went out over 2 weeks ago. Staff has received no phone calls from the mailed notice or the posted sign notice or the advertisement.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any further questions of the applicant? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion if you're ready.
Going to close the public hearing.
Is this a
Oh,
public
I'm
hearing?
so sorry. Yes, this is a public hearing. The hearing is now open to the public. Is there anybody that would like to address the commission on this item? Seeing none, I close the public hearing.
I'd move approval as presented by staff.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, commissioners' matters. Any matters from the commission? The only thing I have to say is that this will be my last meeting, I think, this year. I have resigned from the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's been 12 years. It's time for somebody else to take my seat. Planning matters.
Well, we hate to see you go, but
Sure.
we'll get through this next item at least. Under planning matters, we do have discussion of the draft land development regulation changes, set 2, and a couple of things that I'd like to highlight about this particular discussion item. Just a quick recap. You may recall that within the last few years, the county went through the evaluation appraisal report which basically highlighted changes proposed for the comprehensive plan. Later, we had the EAR-based comprehensive plan amendments, which went into effect. And now we have, for lack of a better term, EAR-based LDR amendments to make the LDRs consistent with the comprehensive plan. And we've also taken the opportunity here to clean up and update other aspects of the LDRs. Back in August, at your meeting in August, we brought you set 1 of the LDRs, which had 10 chapters, a pretty extensive set. And we are revising what was proposed in August based on your input, as well as some other recent issues. We keep updating definitions and Chapter 911 changes, and we should be getting those out to you before Christmas by email. This is the second set that we're going to discuss, set 2 tonight, and we anticipate set 3, last set at one of your January meetings, then a public workshop, We anticipate the public workshop will certainly be an opportunity for all the different topics, but there'll probably be just a few that people will want to really roll up their sleeves and get into. Then there'll be a formal hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission and then the Board of County Commissioners spring of next year. For Set 2, there are really 3 areas that are covered: the Chapter 915 PD process and standards, Chapter 972 temporary uses, and then some, due to vertical datum changes, which I'll explain briefly, that there are a few chapters that are affected by those updates. With respect to Chapter 915, you all see plan developments quite a bit, both residential and commercial. There are some mere updates to that are proposed to clarify certain issues like unified control, what can happen on agriculturally designated lands for TNDs, although that's covered in the policies in the comprehensive plan. They're not mentioned yet. TNDs are not mentioned yet in the LDRs, and it will be with these changes. And also some clarification on the PD buffer standards. No substantive changes there, just really updates. This next item is an EAR-based item. It's establishing standards and a process for what we would term anti-visual monotony design guidelines for residential PDs. And there is a policy that is in place and was put in place after the EAR was adopted. And we have some proposed language to do that. We think that this will be a topic that we've already had some discussion with interested parties, and we think this will get workshopped pretty well in the coming months. Another EAR-based item is regulations for mixed-use developments. You may recall we actually had a few workshops during the EAR on this particular topic, and we think there might be a little more discussion from interested parties on this one as we move forward. There are a couple more details, and what we're proposing then is what is in the policy right now. Another item here is to establish regulations for TND. We've actually had the policies in place for over a decade, and they're very specific, and we've been able to review projects with them, but we do need to put them into the LDR, so we have done so. There's a couple of additions in the TND regulations that we propose with respect to town centers. You can have multiple town centers in a project, make that clear. And you can also, in what we propose, actually have a town center site on an adjacent property if you integrate the TND into that property. Another item is to clarify at the end of Chapter 915 expiration and extension provisions. Conceptual PD plans can run for a long period of time, and they're meant to be long-term sort of master plans. Preliminary PD plans that you all review have a shorter kind of approval lifespan. We wanted to clarify that. Chapter 972 is a chapter that you all probably don't see very often, don't use because they deal with temporary use permits and temporary uses. These are authorized by staff for temporary construction offices, model homes, special events, things like that. But there are some things that we wanted to put in the code that we have kind of put into practice over the years. One is when a model home or a temporary sales office is in a subdivision, we ask now that applicants verify there are no conflicts with private deed restrictions and to give us a contact person for a homeowners association so we can coordinate that. That's worked well in practice. We wanted to put it in the code. Another is to increase the time frame for fruit and vegetable stands. It's been in the code for years that renewable permits for those stands are good for 6 months at a time. Fruit and vegetable stands, most that we have in the county, as it turns out, probably last at least as long as a lot of permanent developments. You don't need to look at them every 6 months. So we're suggesting going to 1 year. And the 1 year is a good checkpoint to make sure they comply and to kind of have a handle on that. So that's our recommendation there. And the one last change in 972 is to make the process a little bit simpler for approving tents when they're used for special events, to just have the fire department do an inspection rather than go through the building department. The last items that we have deals with the vertical datum update. There's been a nationwide change from a 1929 benchmark system to a 1988 benchmark system. Local governments all over the nation are making changes, and our county has been in contact and had workshops with surveyors and development type folks on the changes that were coming. Those changes are almost here, and we do need to update our LDRs, definitions, and some of our application submittal references and references in our stormwater chapter in 930 to reference the new benchmark. One other item in chapter 930 that has nothing to do with vertical datum, but we wanted to take the opportunity while we were changing 930 is to make it clear that minimum elevations for equipment pads, that they're measured at the top of the pad. Common sense tells you that's the way it is, but we wanted to put it in the code so that it was specific. That's just a highlight of the changes. I'd be glad now, Madam Chairman, to take any questions or any input that any of the commissioners have.
Any questions of staff?
I had one in, let's see if I can find it there. It was back in the 5.6. This has to do with streets and the connections. It's number 15, street network. We throw in here on PDs about alternative routes and connections. Is this intended to start connecting projects? Is that what I'm reading?
Okay.
I know that there's been an ongoing debate about this among us, and I just was curious how, the way it worded, I didn't know if we were sticking something in that would change something.
And let me ask, in chapter 915, are you looking at section 915.17 where it says project integration into public systems?
Maybe I'm on attachment 2. I'm in
What page?
Page 22.
3, let's see, page 3, then you go to attachment, future land use element, then it talks about for future land use element 5.6, it says street network. It's page 2 of attachment 2. It's probably
Right.
1, 2, 3, about 4 pages in from the beginning.
Right, and that's from attachment 2, pages 1 and 2 reflect the adopted policy. That's out of the comprehensive plan. And you're correct that that whole segment, the 3 items under street network, in this case, for mixed use, does require interconnectivity.
Oh, this is only mixed use?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
I'm
This is a
sorry.
reference to.
I see it there with PD. I was thinking PDs, and you had fixated on PDs because most of this was about PDs.
And actually, with PDs,
You want
because
mixed use connected? No.
that's correct. And with PDs, you tend to get more connectivity. You tend to get mixture of uses in other types of
Right, no
PDs,
problem.
and there's more discretion,
This
so
would
we
be
tend
like
to have it anyway.
Right. Okay.
I have a question on attachment 3B, page 4. And this is where you talk about the vegetable stands. And a number of years ago, I think we grandfathered in 3 or 4 vegetable stands that were allowed to have electricity.
Correct.
And any other vegetable stand is not allowed to have electricity. So here you're talking about Class C, which is satellite seafood sales operations, which of course are going to require some kind of refrigeration unit. Correct?
Not necessarily. Let me give you a little bit of background for that.
You won't get real close after.
Ain't going to be much sales in that corner.
This was a provision put in the early 1990s. We have never had an application for a Class C satellite seafood sale operations. In the early 90s, there perhaps was an industry or a marketing or some kind of technique for satellite seafood operations in self-contained vehicles. They had their own generator system, their own pull off the side of the road, and the health department approved them. So they were approved by the health department. This was, would we allow one of those types of pre-approved sort of vehicles that did not hook up to permanent power to sit on the side of the road and sell seafood? We put that provision in the code, being the far-sighted county that we are, but we never had. I don't even know if they make those vehicles anymore. I don't even, we've just never had that before.
Well,
That was the intent of that provision.
this land development change specifically states that that type of operation can have a 1-year permit, whereas some other operations only have a 6-month permit. And I don't see, I don't know if anybody feels the way I do, but having a truck out there with its own self-contained generator or something, keeping refrigeration going on this seafood operation, is not to me a vegetable stand I guess the vegetable stand could have its own generator. Are they allowed to?
They could. Most don't. There are some that are still grandfathered in that have permanent power, and they tend to have some refrigeration.
Right, but the ones that are not grandfathered in
Right.
that do not have,
Right.
are not allowed
And
to have
then most
power.
operate without refrigeration.
All right, but this allows them to have, somebody to have a one-year permit on some kind of refrigeration unit, which would be like a truck sitting in somebody's parking lot.
So-
And I have an issue with that.
So would a mobile food unit be applicable here?
Roach codes.
No, that's different. The idea here for this Class C is that there's a particular spot that someone sets one of these seafood sales up, and that's where they operate out of, and people are attracted to wherever it is that they're allowed to set up. The mobile lunch wagons,
Yeah.
it goes by many terms, actually are, they are mobile and they go from site to site to site. They don't attract people to them, they go to where the people already are. And we specifically allow that, just like the ice cream truck.
Gotcha.
We allow that because they're not attracting people to one spot, they're going to where the people are.
Good distinction.
Stan, wouldn't it be more desirable to let these people have power than just have a truck sitting there on the side of the road?
No.
No?
Well, no,
Really?
you bring up a good issue. This is one of the kind of balancing acts with temporary uses versus permanent uses that we have. You want to allow some temporary uses, but, we have store owners go through all of our landscaping and building code requirements versus someone who, can have just setting up on the side of the road and doesn't have all those amenities and kind of safety things built into them. So you want to accommodate kind of a customary use, but not make them on par, so to speak, with a permanent use that meets all the different codes. So that's some of the balancing that has to be done.
One of the issues on that, as Stan said, is safety. The one at US 1 in Indian River Drive where it comes together? That used to be a real safety issue because people could not get off the road. They would get into these ruts. Somebody has paved that. I don't know who has paved that. They made it a lot safer, and it really works now. But who did incur the cost of that? Whereas if it was a business, you would have.
Kroger
Yes.
stand?
If
Back to the generator for a minute. Can we do that before we get to the paving?
Oh, no, that's all right. Don't worry about it.
And so,
Forget
Madam Chair, I
Is-
guess your
is there any
suggestion would be
way-
not to go to 1 year for the type C.
I was going to say, it seems to me that in light of what she said, if you think about it, then maybe we ought to that ought to be the exception to the 1 year rule and leave it at 6 months or something.
Sure, we can do
Until,
that.
if it becomes an issue,
Thank you.
I think we could do
Right.
that, but I think I'd leave it alone.
Yeah, we can leave type C at 6 months as it is
Most
now.
of these places are going to end up being somewhat pseudo-mobile because they're not going to leave anything of value when they leave at night in obscure locations. They're just not going to leave them laying around, so.
Okay, so do you want to leave the Class C at 6 months or put it down to the 45 days as we have for Class B?
I mean, it's probably better shorter than longer, isn't it? That's awfully tight.
The regulation here says no more than 45 days during any calendar year for Class B merchants as defined below.
And Class B merchants are intended to be
Christmas
just
trees,
seasonal,
short-term
Christmas
rentals.
trees,
Short-term
that sort
people.
of
I
thing.
think-
Right. I think the seafood
I
sales
think
would probably
seafood
be
would be
longer.
6 foot. I think or 6 foot, 6 months. I think you'd be all right at 6 months.
I think so, too.
Okay, so we're going to leave Class A at 1 year, Class B at 45 days, and Class C at 6 months. Thank you. Any other?
I think you all did a good job getting all this summarized, Stan.
Yeah, the mixed use and the T&D was nice.
You did a good job putting all that together.
On the North American vertical datum 1988, was that something that FEMA's making you comply with to keep our discounts?
Well, indirectly.
Okay.
Basically, what's happening is we're going through a map modernization process, and we have used new technology. Actually, FEMA used the new technology. It's called LIDAR. It's a certain type of radar, and they used it to get vertical elevations throughout the county, and based on that, they have been updating all of our flood maps. And when they give us the new flood maps, they're going to be in NAVA 88. So we're not going to be able to use the maps if everything is still in NGDV 29. And the other thing is, a lot of the agencies have already gone to NAVD from NGVD. So St. John's is all in NAVD. So there's not a mandate right now that we switch, but it's really the only feasible alternative we have. And actually, it's going to be a logistical problem going forward. We're going to have to figure out exactly.
No more green visors and little sleeves holders or anything?
Well, there are going to be a lot of advantages when we get the new maps. The new maps are going to be all in electronic format. It's going to be much easier to use them. But the logistical challenge is going to be how we actually do the switch, because we've got surveyors who have to prepare elevation certificates who will have to be doing it till the day before, and they'll be using NGVD. And then the day we switch, they're going to have to go to NAVD. And for a while, it's going to be challenging for a lot of people, because generally there's about a 1.4-foot difference between the two. So you're going to have to know what datum your elevation is in when you look at it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
It's
going to be very difficult for insurance agents.
Yes.
Is one.
Yes.
And we have had workshops with surveyors, insurance agents, and others. But as I said, if you look at an elevation certificate or you look at a survey, well, the elevation certificate is going to tell the datum. But if you look at a survey and you look at a finished floor elevation, you're going to have to determine what datum it's in to determine how the elevation is compared to the base flood elevation.
What impact will this have on residents who have flood insurance policies? If they're showing a base flood elevation of, let's say, 3 feet, is this going to make that 3.5 feet now? Or 4.4 feet now?
No. There's actually no change in the real world. In the real world, the finished floor elevation here is at the same point it is. Yeah. But it's just a different measurement standard. So what's going to happen is someone who has a finished floor.
The authentication process. They've got to get the height determining, right?
Well, what's going to happen is we can translate one to the other. If someone has a elevation certificate that was done 2 years ago in NGVD, there is a factor that can be applied to make it NAVD. Generally, it's not the same, but generally in our county, it's about 1.4 feet.
Okay, well, let's say a resident of the county has an elevation certificate.
Right.
And they have to provide an elevation certificate for a new insurance policy. They're changing to another company.
Right.
Do they come to you, the county, to have that elevation certificate updated according to the NAVD, the 88 versus the 29? Do they come to you, or do they get a new survey?
Just like anything else, they're going to have to get a new survey.
Well, that's a couple $100.
I don't know if they're going to have to get a new survey.
I think you can convert. I think the ability to convert would mean that you would roll it over. You don't have to.
Well, I'm
do that.
asking is, does the resident go to staff? Do they come to the county and say, please, can you issue me a corrected elevation certificate?
I don't think they're going to have to do that. I think the agent's going to look, and the elevation certificate is going to actually have both parameters in the same datum. It's going to have the actual elevation of the finished floor in NGVD 29, as well as the base flood elevation back there in NGVD 29. So the agent's going to be able to see that.
The point is, this is a good thing. We got to make an LDR out of it to make it.
Yeah, we just have to change our references. Yeah, and we may have some challenges actually implementing it going forward, but we're going to work with you.
ADD here.
And it won't actually affect flood zones at all. There could be a 1.4-foot discrepancy. I'm not going to suddenly find out I'm in a flood zone.
No, Mr. Tripson, I do believe there's some rezoning going on with the National Flood Program, so it will impact.
The answer is no and yes. And
no and yes?
Right. Just the change in the datum in itself will not.
Yeah.
But Brad's right.
The information might.
Yeah,
Right.
there's examples of Ocean Drive properties that were in flood zone X and now are in flood zone VE, wave velocity zones.
wow.
So yes, it has a huge impact.
That's huge.
And that's all a function of the National Flood Program and FEMA. So
Right.
Yeah, I think we generally think that there's a lot more property going out of the flood zone than going into it, but there are properties that are going both ways.
Okay, any further questions of staff on this?
Just one. Stan, on attachment 3A, page 7, 15.09, unified control. You didn't use a defined term.
Yeah.
Would it be easier to use like the term developer in that situation? That's already defined in 901?
Page
3A,
7,
page
right,
7.
of attachment 3A.
Yes, sir.
What was your question again?
Would it be easier to use a defined term like developer? Because developer is defined in 901. I think that's what you're getting at there, is the person that's ultimately in charge. In this example, we have more than one entity, kind of like South County Initiative.
I think the reason we're not using developer here is because we're going along with the life of the PD after the developer is gone as well. So we're actually having to step back and look at an entire period of time under development and then after post-development. So we're trying to be a little more generic.
Very good.
Okay, any further questions of staff? Is there anyone in attendance that would like to address the land development regulation changes? Okay. Do I have a motion?
This isn't that done.
Isn't that?
I don't think we need it.
I think from the input, the one change was to that one section in 972.
Do you need a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. This was a very good presentation.
Madam Chairman, I know we don't have anything else scheduled under planning matters, but I see that Mr. Hammond wants to say something.
This, if you would allow me, I'm going to stand up because this is, Donna is retiring. She's been here for 11 years. And I get to do this because I'm the senior member. I've been here slightly longer. Please rise. This is a plaque that is presented to you, my dear, from the whole Planning and Zoning Commission. It outlines your time and tenure as chairman and as a member, and sincere appreciation and dedication for your service. Please accept this accordingly. Yes, kisses are okay. I would ask would all of us stand up, the members that have been here with her, even the staff, if we can get another camera taker, but I think we ought to send her off with a group shot.
That would be nice. Can I have staff up here too? Excuse me, young man, do you know how to handle a camera? Oh, Darcy will do it. Thank you.
While they're gathering, I think we ought to thank all of the attendants with these kids and the classes and the civic groups that are out here that are taking notes and diligently listening to everything we have to say. And,
They'll be
no test later, though. No test later.
Bob's going to come up. Yeah, Bob should be front and center.
Should we do it?
We got to do the side turn.
Yeah, there we go.
The camera will pick it off. The camera gets you all, I think. It's got a wide lens on it, so don't overpower it. Push it halfway down, Darcy, and then hit it, I think. I think it may be good enough without the flash. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
You
gentlemen.
have served us well. You will be missed.
It's so sad.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was very kind. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George, for taking care of that.
You're welcome. Actually, I should throw in a punch for TJ's and Tom White and his darling wife Jan, who are very good at this and have done it many times. And if you need something, go see them.
I do want to add that Mr. Hammer does have the rights to any photoshopping opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
That's great. You're right on that.
Okay. Attorneys' matters?
I have nothing, Madam Chairman.
Okay. No further matters. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Glad to see we're getting younger.